Lesson 11, conditional relative frequencies and associations. I can calculate and interpret row and column conditional relative frequencies for given data. And then the second bullet says I can determine if there's an association between two categorical variables, and we'll actually be doing that one tomorrow. So today we're looking specifically at row and column conditional relative frequencies. So far we've talked about relative frequencies as well as just frequencies. So today's pay particular attention to row and column conditional relative frequencies. Open up your book to page 21 if you have not already done so. Exploratory challenge number 1, conditional relative frequencies. Okay, we're using the same two-way table from our previous lessons about the males and the females and their favorite superpowers. A row conditional relative frequency, a conditional relative frequency compares a frequency count to the marginal total that represents the condition of interest. What that means is it depends on if we're talking about males and females or if we're talking about flying, freeze time, and visibility. So it depends on if we're talking about the gender or if we're talking about the superpower. And that's what this next paragraph is going to tell us. For example, the condition of interest in the first row is females. The row conditional relative frequencies for females responding in the invisibility as their favorite superpower is 48 divided by 228. So they took 48 and divided it by 228 because they were looking at females only who responded invisibility. And that came out to approximately 0.211 or 21%. Similarly, 27 out of 222 or approximately 0.12 or 12% of the males prefer invisibility. And those numbers came from the males who chose invisibility divided by their total. Okay, so we're not dividing by the total that were surveyed, we're dividing by each gender's total amount. Okay, use the frequency counts. This is exercises 1 through 5. Use the frequency counts from table in Exploratory Challenge 1 to calculate the missing row of conditional relative frequencies. Round the answers to the nearest thousand. So since we're doing row frequency counts, row conditionals, we're going to divide by, for females, 228, for males, 222, and for the total, we'll divide by 450. So for females who chose to fly, that's 49. So I'll be taking 49 and dividing it by 228. For females who chose freeze time, that's 60 out of 228 females altogether. For superstring, it was only one female out of 228 females. And telepathy was 70 females out of 228 females. And then the total, there was 228 females out of 228, which anytime you divide something by itself, you would get 1. So let's see what those female numbers come out to. For the first one, 49 divided by 228 is 0.214. Or roughly 21%. For freeze time, 0.263. Or roughly 26%. This is going to be our lowest one, 0.004. And that's not going to even make it to 0.5%. And this one's 0.307, which would mean almost 31%. Okay, for the guys, they already did the males and flying for us. So this one came out to 71 divided by 222. That's the guys' total down here. And for invisibility, it was 27. I'm looking back at that first table for each of those numbers. 27 divided by 222. And for super strength, it was 25 divided by 222 males. And for telepathy, it was 48 divided by 222. So each of those this one's coming out to 0.319, or just about 32%. To find the percents, I'm just moving the decimal over two places. This one's coming out to 0.121, so roughly 12%. And this one's 0.112, so just about 11%. And 0.216, so that one's going to be basically 22%. And then on the bottom, since we're dividing by the row total, this one's, there was 450 people in the survey, so this would be 450 divided by 450. Notice that since we divided by the row totals, down here at the end of the rows, they always come out to 1. So now I'm going to take each of the males and female total, which was 100 for flying, and divide that one by 450. And then the freeze time, male and female total, was 131, and I'll divide that by 450. For invisibility, the male and female total was 75, and I'll divide that one by 450. And super strength was 26, divide that one by 450. And telepathy was 118, and I'll divide that by 450. Okay, so each of these has different denominators. Each row has a different denominator. So this one comes out to 0.222, so 22% approximately. 0.291, so approximately 29%. 0.166, so approximately almost 17%. 0.057, so just about 6%. Sorry, that's a 0 in there. Divided by 450, 0.2 0.62, so that's roughly 26%. Okay, so that's how you get a column of conditional relative frequencies. So this is a row of conditional relative frequencies. Okay, suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey, that should say from. What do you think the gender of the student selected? What do you think is the gender of the student selected? What would you predict for this student's response to the superpower question? Okay, so I guess my first answer would be, I would guess that it would be a female just because there's more females than males. So if they randomly selected somebody, I'm going to guess that it's going to be a female since there's 228 females. Versus 222 males. So there's more females, so I'm saying that it's more likely to grab a female out of the survey than there is a male. What would you predict their response? So if it's a female, in order to predict their response, I'm going to see which response the females tend to prefer, and it looks like the females, their number one response, this one's the highest response, it looks like it's telepathy. So if they picked a female, I'm going to guess that their response is probably telepathy just because that was the higher number. If they did happen to randomly select a male, then I would guess that their response was probably freeze time, because that looks like the highest male response at almost 32%. Okay, suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the student's male, okay, I just actually answered that, not realizing it. If the student is male, what do you think his response would be for this favorite? So I actually selected that, or actually just told you the answer, freeze time. So I would guess it's freeze time because that was the most popular response amongst the males. You gotta make sure when you answer these questions that you're answering it using the data, not answering it the way that you would want the answers to be. Suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the selected student is female, what do you think was her response in selection to the, okay, so we actually just answered that up here, and I said telepathy because it was the most popular response. what superpower was selected by approximately 1/3 of the females, and what superpower was selected by approximately 1/3 of the males? How did you determine each answer from the row conditional relative frequency? Well, the first thing I would do is take 1/3 and turn that into a decimal to see what I'm working with. 1/3 is approximately 0.333. And now I'm going to look for which answers are closest to that from the table. So for females, the answer closest to 0.333 for females is actually the 0.370 telepathy. At 30% or 0.3, I think it was 0.307 if I remember right. And then for males, it's actually the number that we've been saying is the highest number. At 0.319, it was freeze time. Actually 33%. So that's why those are the closest to it. Okay, moving on, I'm gonna pass out a handout to you guys. And we're gonna talk about column conditional frequencies. When you get that handout, you need to write down what's in red. So this part right here. The column conditional frequencies can also be computed, so we've been talking about row, by dividing each frequency table by the corresponding column total to create a column conditional relative frequency table. Column conditional relative frequencies indicate the proportion or relative frequency based on the column totals. If we need more time, go ahead and pause it to write that down. So we're going to use the frequency counts from the table in the Exploratory Challenge 1, so using that same table again. But this time, we're going to get the columns. So for example, to fly, females were 49, and altogether the total for flying was 100. So we would take the females and divide that by 100. So we're always going to divide to fly by 100 because that was the total. Males was 51. And we'll divide that by 100. Divided by 100 is pretty nice because all you have to do is move the decimal over. It's the same idea as getting a percent. So this time our columns at the bottom down here, they should all come out to 1. Now freeze time, the total is 131. So that means that we're going to divide everything in this column by 131. So for females, 60 said that freeze time was their favorite, so we'll take 60 and divide it by 131. And males was 71, so we'll take 71 and divide it by 131. And this is how you do column frequency, or conditional frequencies. That one comes out to 0.458, and this one comes out to 0.541. Invisibility, the total for invisibility is 75. So everything in this column will be divided by 75. females who chose flying, or excuse me, invisibility, was 48, so it'd be 48 divided by 75. And males who chose invisibility was 27. So this is 0.64. 0.36. Super strength was 26. So you'd be dividing this whole column by 26. And there was 1 female and 25 males. So this was 0.038 and 0.961. Telepathy. The total is 118. So everything in this column will be divided by 118. Males is 48 and females is 70. And then finally, the last column, that's where our total people surveyed was located. So we'll be dividing this column by 450. There were 228 females total out of 450, and 222 males out of 450. So this is going to tell us how many males, the percent of how many males and females. So 0.506, so almost 51% females, and 0.493, so 49% males. Okay, so that's how you do a column conditional relative frequency table. Okay, next I just want you to write down how it is that you get your row conditional frequencies and your column conditional frequencies. So for row conditional frequencies, you divide the joint frequency, the number inside the table, by the row total. And for column conditional frequencies, you take the joint frequency, the number inside of the table, and divide it by the column total. So you should be writing down what's in red. And then lastly, we're just going to look at 3 different types of tables and tell what the numbers mean. So if it's a relative frequency table, in this case, everything was divided by the total. All numbers divided by total. So in this case, this would be men who like sports divided by the total. So that would be 20% of the men liked sports is what that number would represent. So 20% of the men prefer sports out of all of the people, but you're comparing it to the total. Whereas the square is 36% of the people, because this is men and women together, prefer to dance. People refers to men and women. Okay, so the next one, this is a row conditional relative frequency, so you're only comparing men to men, for example. So this is dividing by the row total. So for this one, this is just 50% of the men play sports. Not comparing them to the women, it's just 50% of the men play sports. And the square, this one's still divided by down here the total, so this one's still the same thing as the one above it. 36% of the people prefer dance. Okay, and the last one is a column. So in this case, you're dividing by the column total. So the oval, this is comparing men to all of the people who like sports. So 62% of the men prefer sports. Let's see how I wrote that earlier. Oops, I prefer wrong here. Oh, still going to be wrong. Out of the men and women. Whereas our square here is 60% of, this is 60% of the this one's still being divided by the bottom here, so it's 60% of the people are women.